one name on the face of this earth that can keep you out of hell. It's not Baptist, it's not Methodist, it's not Presbyterian, it's not Catholic, it's not Jew. There's just one name that can keep you out of hell, and it's the name of Jesus.
Lighten up, Francis.
Hey there, and welcome to Ask an Atheist, the show where we sit down with folks who have let go of religion and aren't afraid to talk about it. I'm your host, Mike Smithgall. Today's episode features Annette Talania-Brandt, and we're diving into her personal journey from belief to disbelief and everything in between. Don't forget to subscribe and share the show if you like what you heard. Let's go.
Welcome, Annette.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. And I'm honored to be your very first guest on what will hopefully be many, many episodes.
Hopefully so. We have a lot of different people in our group from all sorts of walks of life, from different people in the United States and people who have moved to the United States and Chicago from around the world with different religious backgrounds, Hindus, Islam, various sects of Christianity, Mormon. So it's always very interesting for me when I talk to these people and get an understanding of their challenges in their communities and their path. So with that, let's just start out your basically get this out of the way. How long have you been an atheist? And I'll let you decide what that meant, whether it was your first starting to question, therefore agnostic, or when you said, no, I'm fairly convinced of this.
Yeah, I think you kind of alluded to the fact that it's sometimes not this like, there's not like you wake up one day and you're like, oh, well, I'm atheist now. You know, it is a journey. So, and it happens sometimes gradually. So it really was, the very first seed was my brother he was probably like 8 years old and I was 10. And it was like a church function. We were going to go together. And he's like, I'd rather not. And I'm like, what? You're not going to go to the whatever, fill in the blank for whatever the event was. And he's like, that's all bullshit, right? And I was like, what? No, I'm going to go save some souls. Okay, bye. Right. And then, fast forward to college. Is really when I felt like I started to see and then couldn't unsee something. Yeah. When I really started to grow up and start asking myself some of these really hard questions about what do I value? What's important to me? What do I believe in? What do I like to do? What kind of people do I like to surround myself with? All of these questions that people grapple with as you grow up. But yeah, it was a philosophy class as a freshman. I didn't know what I was in for with that professor, but he asked all sorts of, just mind-blowing questions that I walked out of there every class. And I would go home. My dad was pretty religious growing up. He's a Christian. I was raised in a Christian household. Right. And then, it was in these college courses, and I would come home and be like, man, he asked me this question. I just can't stop, juggling it around in my mind. I can't grasp. The cognitive dissonance was really, really powerful at that time. And so the first moment that I think, the brain went fully was the day that we discussed free will. Of course, a bunch of people he asked the question, do we have free will? And this is a Catholic university. So if you can imagine, many of the students said oh, yeah. Of course we have free will. Duh, the Bible tells us that we do. God tells us that we do. And that at that moment was the only thing that ever, existed in my consciousness. Because that's what I was taught growing up. And so listening to the conversation that, kind of came up in the room of people basically regurgitating, I think, a lot of what we learn in Sunday school or whatever. And then, but he said, also, do you think, because, if the Bible is true, then the world is also predetermined. The end of the world is also predetermined, right?
Yeah.
And so like Armageddon has already been planned and the outcome is decided. So how can we have both free will to choose our own path and yet at the same time have the path already decided? So God created us. He knows us. He made us the way that we are. He knows how things will end. He made it that way. And also we have the choice to make that different. But like, how do we make it different than God intended it to be or made it to be?
Right.
And so I couldn't wrap my head around that. And so that was really the beginning of the end for me was.
That free will has always been a little bit of a sticky issue with me as well, because like you said, if it's all predetermined, and we see that from our believer friends and just for all of you that are watching, we're not anti-Christian or because we're living in the United States. I mean, everyone we know is Christian for the most part. Our families and stuff like that.
It's the dominant culture.
It's the dominant culture.
You are or not. It's
It would be silly to be like anti, because I'd be anti the rest of the world.
I have no friends. No. The atheist group.
Just my atheist meetings that we have every month.
Right.
But yeah, that idea that everything is predetermined, because people will always say, God has a plan for you, and He knew you in the womb. There's that phrase, I'm probably misquoting it, but from the Bible, and He knows what's going to happen, because there's this, and sometimes you can say this is good. I think the people that believe they use this as a comfort is that He's not going to give you anything that you can't handle, because He knows He has a plan for your life. That's all well and good until you say, but I also have free will. So how does that deviate from His plan? My friend Aaron, who's a member of this group, he gave me that one time when we were talking about prayer. And he said, the funny thing about prayer is you're asking God to change all of His plans based on your particular whim of the day.
And He's perfect, isn't He?
So plan.
Right.
And you're like, by the way,
He's perfect. He's
I need this job over here, not there. God, if you're listening, could you go ahead and screw everything up in His plan?
You saw this going on over here.
Right.
Like you are powerful enough to see what I do naked. And I'm just not sure if are you paying attention to this struggle that I'm having here? And could you possibly help with these starving children, or the wildfires that are burning out of control, or this earthquake that destroyed and killed 5,000 people, or it's just.
I know you're busy with all that.
Right.
This job has 3 weeks vacation. I don't know if you knew that. So that's the one I really want. So, and I'm being flippant about it, but it was when Aaron put it in the context, like, okay, that's a good point about, and it's the same thing with the free will. I'm asking for this all-knowing, all-seeing creator to make a tweak based on whatever I've decided. Now, there's another philosophical thing where there is no free, even if outside of religion, there's another philosophy that you have no free will anything, because everything you're going to do is predetermined by everything you've ever done. You know what I mean? Because any step I make next is based on every piece of input I've ever had, and it's almost, I have no ability to change where I'm going. I think I do, but I don't. That's a different philosophy, and there's a name for it. I can't remember it, but yeah. So, okay. Now, maybe I ask you, you mentioned one thing. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I'm just curious. Your brother gave you that. Was he your older brother? He was only 8 and you were littler?
He's my younger brother, actually.
Wow. So your little brother. So is he an atheist today?
He is. Oh, yeah. Okay. Like, no question.
I've met him once. That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's definitely he has a very kind of dry and also flippant sense of humor as well, and so for example, he just we'll talk about like, hey, what are you doing for Easter? And he's like, oh, I don't know why I should celebrate the fact that we that the state murdered somebody, and he'll just say things like, so he just cuts right to the heart, and so I think it's helped me in some ways feel a little less crazy for just even questioning some of the things. Like once I started However, at the beginning of my journey in college, like that kind of part of my atheism coming to Jesus moment, with my atheism, my brother was in the military. He was in the service, and he was in Kuwait. He was like gone for periods of time, and so I actually didn't have a lot of contact with him, during that little pocket of time that I really became. And so it was funny because then when we really reconnected, when he was done with basic training and some of his like more intense training that he went through, when he dipped back into the family life, he was like, oh, wait, like, oh, I can say this stuff now and you're not going to give me time. And I'm like, I'm there, brother. I see it. And he's like, see,
So were you went to Catholic University? Were you? I always kind of use this term because I think of myself. I grew up what I call casual Christian. Like I went to church on Sundays, and we would pray at like big sort of family events, like an Easter or whatever. But I was raised Episcopal, which is a pretty casual religion, versus where I grew up in Florida. Later, when we moved to Florida, it's a lot of Southern Baptist, which is a little more strict. It's not the right word. I don't mean to use it that way, but they're much more. It's much more involved. It's more forward, than we were as Episcopal.
The expectations on you are higher to act and do certain.
So
things.
were you the same? I mean, how strong? I guess is a good word. How strong was your Christianity and your involvement? Even though you went to a Catholic university, a lot of kids go to Catholic school, and it's just because that's a good, not cheap. It's a good school that's not public, right?
Yeah.
Or was yours more of a philosophical, like, no, I'm really, really interested in being.
For me, it was like out of necessity. It was close by. So I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. So it was in like the Woodridge and Bolingbrook area. And I went to Lewis University. It's a Lasallian Catholic university in like Romeoville. So, pretty just really close. And so out of necessity, I knew I had to go to college in order to get out of like the really poor economic situation that I was in with my nuclear family. However, it was, they offered me a scholarship. I got an academic scholarship, and I also got a swimming scholarship while I was there. So it really helped to like, didn't fund the whole thing, but it really helped to supplement a private school education for me in a way that was more affordable, like a state school would have been.
Right.
And so that I felt like was like a no-brainer. The fact that it was Catholic wasn't in that wasn't part of really my decision to go there. It almost swayed me away from it, but I knew because my parents both grew up Catholic, and they had very bad experiences growing up in the Catholic Church. And so they purposely put us kids, I have a brother and a sister, the three of us, in public school all growing up because their options were public school or Catholic school, and they had bad experiences. So they're like, nuns making them eat I don't know. My mom always used to talk about they used to serve fried bologna sandwiches all the time. And my dad used to talk about how they would hit them with rulers and force them to line up for confession. And he's like, oh, yeah, it's anonymous. Yeah, right. He's like, they line us up by class in alphabetical order. That shit ain't anonymous. Like, you can't fool me for a second. So when I chose where to go to school, my dad said to me, like, I purposely avoided Catholic school your whole fucking life, and now the one time that you get a chance to choose what school you go to fucking Catholic school. And then that's ironically where I became an atheist, which is also so funny.
That is ironic. I do wonder how many people, well, we say this within sort of atheist community, that the surest way to be an atheist is to start reading the Bible. You know what I mean? So it's curious that this professor at a religious university is the one that really sparked you to turn the other way. I mean, it's not an uncommon story for a lot of us. It's a lot of us that, a priest or a minister or someone said something and we're like, wait, I don't think that makes sense. And then it's just like a waterfall of questions, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, and he challenged us on so many other issues too. We didn't just talk about religion in that class. Like, it was such a gripping class for so many reasons. We would talk about, for example, like feminism. He brought up one day, like, do you feel like you have equal rights and equal opportunity as a woman? And I was kind of like, I guess. Like, I didn't know how to answer that question.
Yeah, as a
I
kid.
never really thought about it. Like, my parents very purposely tried to steer certain things. Like, we all took out the trash and we all did the dishes and we all helped with, like the domestic in the house. And like, they tried to reduce those kinds of like gender expectations and labels on us. However, it shows up everywhere in society, and especially in the church, where like all the elders are all men, and usually white men, to be honest. And
Right.
so,
yeah.
It was, I don't know. So when he asked me about feminism, or asked me about equality, yeah, I was kind of stumped. And he went around the room, asked a whole bunch of people, and people were like, well, the law says that we're supposed to get equal pay, but do we actually get equal pay? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. It was like this whole, so he brought up a lot of different topics that were just thought provoking. And he wasn't teaching us what to think. He was presenting us with exercises, like these thought experiments, and we had to see them through to the end to say, like, what is it that I actually believe? What makes sense to me? And let's actually sit down with no agenda to like, here's the end point that we want to get to. It's just let it run its course and let's see where it goes. And so he changed my life. He really did.
That's good.
That was about 20 years ago. So the journey I've been on has been about 20 years. And I met you about 10 years ago?
10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was pretty, solid in my staunch atheist stance, I guess I could say. And it was this thing called Facebook that was like, oh, hey, this is a new way to connect with people and join groups, and let's see if we can find, and finally I had a way to connect to people who, wouldn't balk at some of the things that I would bring up or questions that I had or other things. So, so that's kind of a sum up of 20 years.
No, it's funny you say it, because when we first moved to Chicago, we had come from the South. We grew up in Florida for the most part. We have a house there. Our kids were born and raised there. And the South is different than, say, Chicago or lots of other parts of the country. And religion is, again, very forward. So, I had come to that conclusion long before I became out about it. And even when I was out about it in the South, I was still not out about it. I mean, I was kind of like, all right, I'll take it or leave it, because it can be, and we'll get to this later, but it can cause issues with just your society, your interactions with society. Some societies obviously are better or worse. They're
more accepting. Yeah.
I am curious, like, so you were in school, you're a young girl, young woman in college. So you come to this conclusion, and I'm going to put this up on the screen too. Did it give you any change to what you perceived as morality? What you thought was moral as a Christian or a believer that was heavily going to be influenced by the Bible. Did that change? And you and I are both, LGBTQ advocates. We're very strong. That's one of my hot buttons. Having a daughter who's married to a woman. So that was not something I had to wrestle with, because I was already out of thinking about religion when she came out. But for a lot of people, that's a big one, especially Catholic. That's a pretty big thing in the Catholic religion. There's a lot of people that are anti-gay, to put it in blunt terms. Did you have to wrestle with any of that, or change your perspective on what was moral versus not moral? Or what's your thoughts about morality as it relates to atheism?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be honest, it's not to say that I never grappled with morality. However, in that, again, I'm going to reference that period of time when I was in college, and I felt like I did a lot of, kind of personal growth and, just exploring my own journey. Like, what do I believe? What do I stand for? What do I value? I didn't so much grapple with the morality as I did grapple with the religion that didn't align with the morality. Like what I, in my gut, in my heart, knew to be like a value or a truth to me, like gay people are people. Right. That like, period. And it was kind of like, wait a minute, but then you know, thinking back to some things that were said or other comments that were made. I mean, I remember mentioning in youth group when I was like in middle school. And so you know what, I did get the reputation of being a little bit of a rebel rouser. I wouldn't say troublemaker quite, but like rebel rouser when it comes. Can you imagine like that?
You? It's so
me?
shocking.
No. So, I would ask questions like one time, one of our youth group leaders got up and said, you know, the phrases like AD and BC.
Yeah.
When referring to, you know, the years.
Yeah.
So they said, think of it like this: BC is before Christ and AD is after death.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, okay, even if I could buy that, that's not true, right? It's like
not actually what it means, but yeah, everybody says that, so it's almost
but it's like a shortcut. Okay, so that wasn't just my church, right? Is that like kind of a myth in Christianity? Yeah.
Yeah.
So they said that, and then I asked, well, okay, so Jesus supposedly lived for how many? I probably didn't say supposedly. I would say that now. But 32. Jesus lived for 20. How old was he when he
32?
Was if I'm 32. Okay. 32 years old when he was supposedly crucified.
Right.
What about those years? Are those BC years or are those AD years? Yeah. And like literally the math didn't match in my head. Like I can add, you know, and so like it just, you know, so it started with things like that. Even I would say I was leaving breadcrumbs for myself, and then you know the evil philosophy professor came in and just like blew it open like the side of my head. Carl Sagan says, keep an open mind, but not so open that your brains fall out. Like that. I love that. But I don't know if that answered your question, but that was a fun little tangent there.
No, it's Marta, one of the people in our Facebook group, says he was 33. So we're corrected.
We were both wrong.
I was in the right range. So
yeah, so I was questioning it. Yeah, where was I going with that?
Well, we're talking about the morality. Did you have did you wrestle with any morality issues that, and I guess I'm thinking like, was there something you thought, well, that's not right based on a Christian and religious perspective. And then you realize later, why is that not right? It's just maybe what this group says is not right. But me as a person, and you kind of did allude to that there were differences already that you had a feeling that the religion didn't align with your beliefs. But I'm wondering, was there anything specifically as a result of you becoming an atheist or going down that path, you're like, this is completely wrong.
Yeah, you know,
you used to think. We're kind of confessing our sins here, that we used to think something, and we changed that opinion on people, perhaps, or whatever the issue was.
Yeah, so so in middle school, my best friend at the time, I won't disclose their name for privacy reasons because of the story I'm about to tell, but they lost their virginity. And in a church youth group where they preach purity, purity until marriage and all of that, like it was this, I felt like I had this big secret that was gonna hurt her and hurt me and hurt all, like it, we were basically taught that it would poison the well, so to say. And, they wouldn't have appreciated having her, be a mentor, say, to some of the younger youth groupers, and or they probably just wouldn't have liked to have her in the group at all, to be honest, now looking back on it. But
how old was she at the time?
We were both like maybe 13 or so.
Oh, that's pretty young, though.
Which
I mean,
it is young. It is.
Parents, we were like, oh my God,
Of course. And, they had maybe reason to be concerned, or, that would be a place for adults to like help guide, children into safety and
Yeah.
security, instead of like the shame that
Yeah.
ended up coming down. So I did end up confessing to a youth group leader. There's this woman that I really liked a lot and I trusted her. And really, she went and told like all of the other youth group leaders, and she betrayed that trust for me. And that was a big deal. And so then I watched all of this that happened afterwards with like the shaming her and shaming me. I was guilty by association because I was her best friend.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I don't know. There were several heartbreaks like that for me over the course of the years that I think I just felt so betrayed. There was another incident where a friend of mine, had a similar issue, she was grappling with her parents with whether or not her boyfriend, she could see him and she could go out after 11 and blah, blah, whatever. And, she was put into a room with like the elders and just ripped to shreds. Yeah. I mean, when you're 14 years old and you're in the presence of, the entire church leadership and you're embarrassed about talking about it in the first place. You'd be embarrassed to talk to a friend about it, much less like adults. A panel of adults that are, shaming you. So there was just too many incidents like that it just left a really bad taste in my mouth. So I guess by the time I got to college, I was ripe for the taking. It just had to pick me right off of that tree. I practically almost fell off.
Yeah. It's funny. You mentioned something earlier struck me about being gay or something, however you said it. And that was kind of like you. There was a moment where I was 17, 18, give or take. I was working at a gas station, a Shell station in Florida. And three of the guys that worked, actually two of the guys and one of the women, they were all friends. I grew up in the same area of town that I did. And they were all gay. And it was, I'm a 17-year-old boy in a sort of redneck side of a redneck town sometimes, and, but they were also like normal, and nice and friendly. And they would come in and their friends would come in.
That.
Yeah. As they were a handful of years older than me, and they're probably early to mid 20s, which, at that age feels like they're much older, but they would come in and it was one of my first realizations, like, oh, things I've heard are not true at all. Because now that I'm experiencing people outside of the bubble that I'd lived in, and not a hardcore bubble, but still, it's like, I don't understand why there's this problem, because nice, friendly people and their friends seem friendly and normal, it's normal. They're just like dudes that I hung out with because they were, the guys were changing shifts and he comes in, 20 minutes early and he's doing whatever. And I'm hanging out and talking to him. And
it was a surprise to you that they were so normal and also gay because of the way that we are kind of taught to think about.
At least back then. And of course, this is the 80s for me, because I'm a little bit older than you. But it was kind of when it was, and then I'd look at the religious part of that again, and maybe the Southern Baptist more so than the Episcopal, but which was again mostly who I was around, like kids at school and whatever. The Southern Baptist is a very strong religion in the South, So I was like, this isn't. I hear all this over here, and I'm talking to people face to face. It does not seem to jive at all. It's completely different. So you and I had similar things where we had something that was personal with a friend, and it didn't connect. And
it didn't. Well, and they don't, for people who preach to say that, that they are that they are moral, or that they use their religion sort of like this alibi for being moral.
Yeah.
And what I actually heard a church leader say this one time around the same time when I was probably in middle school or high school. Somebody asked if they could bring a friend to, one of the youth group gatherings, but they were concerned, like, well, this person is gay. Like, can I bring them? Really? And then I heard one of the church leaders actually say, like, well, as long as they're not a child molester. It's like, wait a minute, like I really and truly, and I think we as atheists kind of get lumped into that group of like, just like societal rejects that like have something, like there's something inherently wrong with us for existing outside of the dominant culture in a way that like we should be ashamed of ourselves for, like somehow some sort of like ethical misgiving.
We are definitely, and I hate to say that, and I'm saying it from the perspective of people that are not us. We get lumped in as deviants, you know what I mean, in some way.
Deviants,
obviously not saying that gay people are deviant, but
no.
It's like, oh, you're an atheist, or you're gay, or you're a devil worshiper, which is really obviously even more ridiculous. But it's like it's all the same group of non-moral people to a lot of people,
right?
Which is frustrating. I mean, I'd say I get it. I know why they're saying it. I just can't understand why they believe it per se. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just
they're regurgitating it and internalized it.
Yeah. I mean, we were out last night with some friends, and we met a couple, and we were out with another couple, and they had a couple that they knew. And it's not like my atheism came up one time, and then 4 or 5 hours we were all together. And I presume they thought I was a nice person, and my wife was a nice person. So it's like, I bet if they really knew, they might be like, oh, I didn't know atheists could actually have a conversation without, trying to sacrifice a child or something, whatever we do.
You actually had morality, like and I see Larry just posted in the comment, Larry Warren, someone hurt us, so we hate God, right? And it's like, wait a minute, like, so a couple of these, like, I know you didn't ask me this formally yet, but I can feel that we're kind of getting to the point where we're talking about, like, what are some misconceptions? I don't want to do your job for you as the host.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, like, is this misconception that we hate God. And it's like, wait a minute, I don't believe in God, period. You know, another misconception is that we are like devil worshippers. And it's like, wait, I don't believe in the devil either. Like, neither of those things exists in my belief system. Yeah. And so, I'm sure there's so many more, but those are those are the ones that popped up for me when Larry made that comment.
It's a very, I'm just sorry, Larry, I'm missing some of the, so if you see one, Annette, that I don't mention, throw it out there, because I'm missing some of the messages. But that, what you just said about the devil worshiper, I always found that odd. I joke, and that's, a little bit of a twist on the knife there a little bit, but like, if I don't believe in Jesus or God, why would I listen, or why would I believe in his ex-BFF, the devil? Right. I don't believe in Harry Potter. I certainly don't believe in Voldemort or whatever the
guy's name is. How is it that God gets away with not having to take responsibility for having created the devil, right? Like, if it all came from the same pot, whether you believe in religion or you believe in evolution or whatever, but like it all came from the same place. And so
the inability to defeat him as well is always all true.
Well,
but yeah, I mean, there is that.
You are all powerful, but you can't defeat he who you created and knew that that was going to happen. And like,
I can't out, but not quite all the way out. I mean, it's not. It's again, it goes back to that. I don't
want to make fun of people's beliefs, but this is just my thought process and what goes on in my head to like make it to where I don't think that believing or not believing is actually a choice. I think we either are convinced or we're not. We've either thought about it to the point where like we've questioned it and made a conscious decision to commit to learning, or we just, accept what we've been taught. And that either convinces us or it doesn't. And so like, I can't believe even if I wanted to.
That's a good question, or a good point. There's a scale. The man's name is escaping me. It's not Christopher Hitchens. It's he's a biologist.
Richard Dawkins.
Richard Dawkins, yeah. So he has a scale of where you are from hardcore believer to hardcore atheist, and it's like 7 steps. Mm-hmm. And the one, on the one end is the absolutely God is real, no question. And then there's absolutely God is not real, no question. And I always fall into just one step back from that, which is like, I don't know. My perspective is not that there is not a God. It's just there's no proof that has convinced me of it. But if suddenly God were to appear before me, it would be amazing. It'd be the biggest thing in the history of the world, right?
So what a way to convince me that you're all powerful is to just put that power right on display.
Right.
He can do that anytime he wants, and for some reason he just doesn't feel like it.
It just hasn't done it. Yeah. So I guess if you had to get a technical term,
you'd be a 6 out of 7.
Yeah, it's like when I said, so I'm agnostic, but I live my life atheistic. You know what I mean? In the sense that I also don't know who invented the wheel, and I don't care because I still have wheels and I'm fine. It doesn't really matter where the origination comes from. This is the belief, and I function every day with that. I don't think there's a God. I have no proof there's a God. But if someone thinks there is, and the evidence that they've seen leads them in a different direction, okay, I can live with that. I don't really have a problem with that. It's when they overlap. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
When we have to do this or being told to do this, you and I are restricted from something because somebody else's religion. That's when it becomes a little funky. I don't like that.
Oh yeah, don't even get me started on the abortion bullshit. Like I can't even with that. Like it just baffles me. But one of the things that I try to do in order to normalize atheism in the world, just among people when I'm talking to them, if I happen to mention, which I don't often do, like I will not do that the first time, probably not the first 5 times that I meet somebody. But if it happens to come up in some capacity and I have some sort of rapport with folks, so like if I believe that my telling them now, like they're already convinced that I'm probably a good person.
Right.
And and it won't necessarily like ruin, or I try not to like spoil our relationship right off the bat. However, also if you're such an asshole that you're like, oh, an atheist, I can't be friends with an atheist, it probably won't work out anyway, to be honest. But anyway, what I try to do to kind of normalize it, I try to tell them like, it doesn't have to be this big scary thing. All the difference between you and I is that I believe in one less God than you. There are literally probably more, I think, the last time I checked, there were more than 10,000 gods that have been recorded as like worshipped by humans. I mean, this is including the monotheistic gods, and the polytheistic. Yes, exactly. Like all the Greek gods and all the
and all these. Yeah, there's a million gods. There's a lot of gods out there.
Yeah,
and like nobody else believes in either.
Thousands, probably more than a million. In the history of people, there's always been some kind of version of this that, and I believe this is just my own personal kind of worldview, is that it really came from a place of like trying to answer questions that we didn't know the answers to. Like that there was a point where there wasn't telescopes to see, out in space and like know things that we know now. And so we explained to them like, oh, the like water is falling from the sky. Why is this? And it happens to be on the day that I, also did this ritualistic dance. And then, so it must be somebody. There's like a way to explain the unexplainable or the unknown. So I don't know. I think that I just try to tell people, I just believe in one less God than you. And really, that's the only difference.
Simple as that. It's you were saying about the a disconnect between like, why is it making loud sounds in the sky? I don't know, because I'm 400 or 4,000 years ago. I have no concept of why that is. And it's the the correlation is not causation. It's like, well, I also did just sacrifice a goat, and the storm stopped.
Right.
That's correlation. It's not causation.
100%. Yeah, that's exactly.
You don't have any bigger view. I mean, it was like 150 years ago, whenever they discovered germs or something crazy, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff we just don't know, but things like that you and I would say, okay, well, obviously because there's weather pressures and there's this and that. And I can't explain thunder either, but I could look it up.
Yeah,
we understand these things, like you said, but ancient times, and it's not. I mean, this is one thing I don't struggle with it. But I do have to admit that that religion is clearly more common than non-religion throughout human history, right? Now, believers in any religion will often point to that and say, well, isn't that good, in the sense that doesn't that sort of by default prove that it exists?
Yeah, it's proof to them.
Don't see that, but I see where they're coming from. But it's like, just because a lot of people believe something doesn't mean that it is true. You know?
I mean, I think also, like, so many, most civilizations in the history of humans have also tried to solve problems through war. And I also think that that's not the way to go. Like, just
way.
because my mom would say, just because everyone's doing it, not
right.
mean.
Jump off the bridge with a nuclear weapon.
Speaking of jumping off the bridge, like, why do our parents use examples like that? Like, that's a horrible, like, visual.
I mean, I guess someone did. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, yes, but like, because somebody else did, I don't know. But like, even just to use that as an example, like that, it has to be this, like, you know, really torturous, like, brutal example. You know, and why? I don't know. I shouldn't be surprised when we're also raised, many of us, to believe that if you don't do this, or if you do this, or if you don't pray this way, or if you get naked in front of the wrong person, or if you know, somebody with the same body parts as you, that somehow like you're going to go to a place with fire and brimstone and pain and burning forever. Tell us these stories when we're like 5, and it's like, wait a minute, like, that's, I mean, I say this half flippantly, but also half serious. Like, that's abuse.
It's well, we would say so. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's not okay to threaten. I mean, it would be an abusive relationship, in my opinion, for God to say that to us. And now for us to pass that along to our children. And I mean, God, I don't know what else we would expect from a God who is abusive in a lot of ways. I mean, he flooded the whole earth because he got pissed off. He just kills off a bunch of people. He also impregnated a woman without her consent. Like, he didn't go to Mary and say, like, would you like to become pregnant with the savior of the world? Yeah, there was no humility there. It was just kind of like, and it is done. You know, like, what? Yeah. Like, can you, oh, wait, are you going to help me explain this to your husband? No, you are going to do that, and I won't help you. Right. And hopefully he sticks by you. But, oh, by the way, you're also going to give birth in a barn.
A barn. It was funny. I'm gonna switch gears after this, but you just said about the virgin birth. When I was in 8th grade, we were going through Greek mythology and Greek and Roman, and and I always forget who the god is, but there was a god, and the story is, and I'm not going to use the words because I don't remember, it's Zeus or Jupiter, whoever it was, but whoever it was, there was a woman that was locked in a tower. And this god, whichever god it was, and again, in that Greek and Roman mythology, came in through, like, as a sun ray or something like that. She was locked in a tower, got her pregnant, and that became whatever that, and it'd be, again, a name that we would recognize. I'm just forgetting the story. But that became the son of that god, right? Yeah. And I remember in 8th grade, so what are you, like 12 or give or take? I remember thinking, literally, and I can remember Mr. Isaac was my 8th grade teacher at Stanton in Jacksonville, Florida. I remember thinking that's oddly familiar story. That, you know, someone that got pregnant from a god, God's mortal child. And I don't remember anymore how this story played out, what that child did. I just remember thinking that seemed very familiar to me. I mean, I knew what I was saying. I mean, it was like, that's a weirdly similar story. It's actually
a common story in, like, hundreds of
as I found out later.
Where you were going with it? Yeah.
But my next thought of that was like, well, that's a similar story, but I'm learning about it as a fairy tale. I'm learning about it as a Greek mythology, and that's a fairy tale. But if I wait 5 more days, I'm going to go to church, and it's absolutely the way it happened, real. Right? Yeah. So I remember it was very young. I didn't really go much further at the time, but that was a sort of a big revelation for me to say, there's something different about religion, and not that I was knocking religion or against religion. It's just like, okay, well, maybe there's more to why religions exist. And it's like we said earlier, there's a way to explain things, or there's a way to teach morality, and there's a way to just carry on good stories that help grow a society. They don't necessarily have to be true, but they have to be tales that can be told. And of course, for most of
they should be
written word. So stories are a good way of passing information along and giving, and they can get extrapolated and it goes beyond the story. But
hopefully they have a lesson to them. And
hopefully they have a lesson. But
like, what do you really teach? Are you teaching what you think you're actually teaching? Well, sometimes
not so much, right?
No.
Right. Let me ask you another question, because I obviously know you, and I know you have a child, and I know your husband's family can be pretty religious. So how do you deal with that? I'll ask that in sort of two parts. How do you deal with, say, close friends or family that see you as an out sort of atheist? So, I don't think either one of us are going around holding up signs, it's really not our way. But when it comes up, we don't shy away from it, at least not today. But how do you handle those friends or family who give you grief over that? And then the second part of that question would be, how did you handle teaching your son this from whenever you started to even address it? Or did you teach him, or did you just tell me? Either way, you answer that how you decide to answer that.
Yeah, so in my family, I would say, so I told you my dad and my mom were both religious. They were were raised Catholic, and then they ended up landing somewhere in like a non-denominational Midwest version of Christianity. And so my family, though, if you kind of zoom out to some of my extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc., grandparents, my family's pretty divided in terms of like, there's enough of us atheists in the family that my dad was religious, but his dad was an atheist. And so that kind of, sunk into enough of the descendants that, the skepticism, I guess, like the encouragement of like, okay, you're going to go to Catholic school because your mom says that you have to, but also, I won't pretend to have been there for those conversations, but I'm just kind of inferring that they picked up on it somewhere along the way. And so there's enough of us that I would say we can't be pushed around, and we can't be bullied. And, nor do we want to do that to them either. We're not like high in numbers. We're pretty divided. So I think, at Thanksgiving, we will be respectful if some people want to pray and some people don't. There isn't like this pressure. It's like, hey, if you want to say grace, you can come on in, and then the rest of us kind of file in there, a few minutes later, and it's fine. But it has put a strain on, some relationships over the years. I know you brought up my in-laws, and some of the backstory about that. That's not my biggest issue with them, to be honest. It's like, I know I know that they dislike that about me very strongly because I didn't, let's say baptize. We didn't baptize our son, my partner and I. We didn't, we don't participate in this, some of those like rite of passage ritual kind of things, growing up, christening, or, I don't even
communion,
know
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, communion, exactly. Like we don't do all of that growing up. Or during his growing up. He's almost 17 now. And, but we've had moments where at like, let's say my favorite story about him kind of like coming, like we just never really taught him about religion until it came up organically. And then we would have, teaching moments, or we would have, and again, I'm not trying, because I'm not like here to fill his head with atheism, right? Like I want to teach him how to think, not what to think. And so we just kind of like are laying out some questions and say like, this is true and this is true. what about this? What do you think about that? If
Mm-hmm.
A and B are true, like, what do you think about that? Or like, is A true? Is B true? I don't, like, let's talk about this. And so it got to the point where, a family member of mine, as a joke, got me a magnet to put on my refrigerator, and it said, "Keep Christ in Christmas." And it was really just meant to be kind of like a ha-ha funny, like, white elephant gift or whatever.
Right.
And at some point, my son was probably like 8 or 9 years old, and he read it, and he was like, And so he came and asked me, like, so just to give a little bit of a setting, I happened to be in the shower. So he walked in the bathroom to ask me this question, but we could not see each other, right? Like the curtain is there in between us, and we can hear each other, but cannot see each other. And so he says to me, "Mom, who's Christ?" Chris.
That's funny.
I'm thinking, like, where did he hear that, see that? And then I was like, oh, Christ. Oh, the magnet. And like, I kind of like really quick was like, that's the only place at our house that he would have heard that. And so I said, have you heard of people that, have talked about Jesus before? And he was like, yeah, I've heard that. And I said, well, it's kind of like his last name, Christ, Jesus Christ. I said, it's not exactly that, but it was an age appropriate way for me to explain it to an 8-year-old, right? So Jesus Christ. I said, some people believe, and that's usually how I just start, by saying that. I'm not trying to, again, say you should or shouldn't or whatever. I just say some people believe that, 2,000 years ago, he died and then he came back to life.
Yeah.
There was like this awkward silence at that time because we couldn't see each other, but it's almost like you could hear the wheels grinding.
Right.
But Mom, people can't come back to life after they die. I like whipped the curtain open, but just at my face. And I was like, right. And never forget that, son. And like the rest I don't have to teach him that's not true. Like all he needs to know is that people can't come back to life after they die. And I didn't teach him that. I didn't make that true. That's a well-known fact. Like, you have to suspend that
reality to accept the Jesus story, which is, again, okay, if that's what they want to do. But you're
the most important story to their whole system, and without that, it falls apart.
Right, it does. So let me, as I'm looking at some questions I had here. So this is always I think you and I are going to come on down the same sides of this. But as far as like politically active, you're, I think, more politically active than I am in terms of just your natural tendency is to do more in that sort of set. I have a sister-in-law that went to a rally today down in Florida. There's a lot of
they were doing a bunch yesterday too.
Yeah, there's a bunch here. They're all over the world actually. It's not really my normal first thought. I mean, I get it, and I support it, and I appreciate it. I'm just not really a rah-rah guy. Hey ho!
You and I have been to a political protest march together, though.
And I will go in the future because there is a level of like I want to support things, but I don't really get into activism. Now, some people are very much of an activist. Mm-hmm. Where do you think? Where do you personally fall in, or where do you think, as a community, atheists should pursue broadening our appeal? Is probably not the right word because I don't know how many people think it's appealing, but how do you think we should handle that?
Oh, yeah, those are, I think you asked, it is like a lot of different questions kind of rolled into one really big philosophical question, which is okay. Like, I think it's an important one to grapple with, right? I think that So again, as you said in my bio, in the bio that I sent you, I believe that the political is personal, right? Yeah. Like when you're casting a vote or showing support for a certain political cause, political causes come about, in my worldview, as a way to solve problems. And the biggest societal problems that we face are often grave danger problems, right? Things that kill people, things that like, so that's why the government, generally speaking, is in charge of fire protection for the country. You know, like why they're in charge of building infrastructure so that people don't die driving over bridges, so that we all have clean water, at least until, you know, Doge gets a hold of the people who test poop in our water.
Right. Keep those guys around.
Like they could just, we don't need them. We could just cut. You know, like E. coli. Oh my God. Anyway, so like I think that if you care about public safety, if you care about the community, if you care about your fellow human, you're going to want and need some of these things fixed, and they have to be dealt with on a large scale. And so that is inherently both, to me, political and personal. And so you know, I do think that we should put our energy into, I know that there are people that worry about what laws there are and you know, what we're allowed to do. But I think that regardless of what the law says, like the law, all that means is what we are willing to punish. Right. As a society, really, that's what laws are. If we make something illegal, that doesn't mean that people aren't going to do it. Right. Like abortion being illegal in some areas doesn't mean that people are not going to get an abortion. It just means now that more people are going to die trying to get one. Right. And the people who are going to die more are people who are Black, people who are poor. You know, people who have a disability, people who, you know, who are marginalized, and can't and don't have money to just fix the problem, right? If
Donald Trump, state, they'll allow it.
I tried so hard not to say his name, but if Donald Trump, you know, got a woman pregnant, like, just because, I mean, it could be anywhere in the country that has, you know, abortion laws making it illegal. Oh, that bitch is getting an abortion. Just saying.
Sure. Yeah.
You know,
you see like that, so how do you
access? I think we need to channel our energy into people having access to life-saving care, to life-saving programs and services, and that's what I feel the most passionate about.
Do you link that road to atheism, or can you, or how would you go about linking the two, or do you not? I mean, I think we both agree on that. I'm not that we're disagreeing on any of this necessarily, but I agree. But is that just a normal, say, liberal, for lack of a term? That's a liberal perspective, but not necessarily atheist, because we both know, and this is another thing that's a misconception going back to earlier question, you can be liberal and be very religious. Those are not completely exclusive, you know. But you can also be liberal and atheist, and more atheists are liberal than atheists are conservative, right? But what you're talking about is a general liberal sort of philosophical point, which is that this empathy and these services and care for the people that are in need, ironically, which is what you would say maybe included in the Bible, but not necessarily practiced. But can you link those sort of things to atheism? I mean, I could link them maybe in a scientific perspective versus let's remove the Bible from something like, and I hate to go into an abortion thing because I don't want to, but let's remove the Bible from abortion. Let's talk about it from scientific medical reasons. You know what I mean? That's because as an atheist, I'm approaching it as a scientific and pragmatic view. You know, or can you? I guess can you connect those two or no?
So I think you know, religion. One thing that it claims to be the owner of morality, right? And I don't think that's true. I think it's very separate. And when I discovered my morality, my ethics, my values outside of, you know, what I was taught growing up, just because the Bible said so. If I try to come up with reasons, you know, that I believe these things, what I said is a lot of the reason for that. I want, people to have the tools that they need in order to live like a safe and happy life. And I think that it to me is the natural conclusion when you care about people. I guess if I can, I guess I'll say this. If I do a lot of work in, intimate partner violence prevention, right? So for example, if someone is sexually assaulted, if somebody experiences rape, I think if you ask any room of people, like, is rape bad? Right? Like, we're all going to agree on that.
Yeah.
Why is it not one of the 10 commandments? Thou shalt not rape. Like, if it is a universal truth to all of us, like, wouldn't it be true to all of us?
Yeah.
And so I think that there are these crossroads that it kind of brings us full circle back to the beginning of, like, when I was grappling with, my values and my morality, and how it just didn't align with, the church, at least that the culture that I grew up in. If you try to tell me that gay people, I shouldn't associate myself with them because they're somehow like morally, what was the word that you used earlier? Deviant. Yeah, like some sort of deviant. And yet my experience of them, like, they're not a monolith, but them, I don't know, like the gay people that I knew at that time, if that wasn't my experience, then, at some point it doesn't add up. And in the end, my empathy for those folks won out. Rather than like the rule follower in me.
I think it's for me, that's exactly it. It's like I could have a set of rules that someone else is telling me, but it just flies in the face of what I'm feeling. I'm feeling like these people need help, or these feeling that these people are fine. They're average, just like me. I'm feeling this thing, and we can't always go with our feelings, but it's like the human part of me is like, I need to respect this person because they're a human being and they seem to be doing the right thing, and they're trying to get through life like everybody else. I'm not going to let another book say yes, but at the same time they should go to hell. Like that's a little extreme.
Right. I love you.
Yeah, exactly. Love you. Mean it, but hate the sinner. Love love the sinner, hate the sin? Like, nah.
They love to say that, but that's not actually true. No, that it's just
Let me ask you this. So we're gonna wrap up here in a few minutes. So two, 3 things. Very Chicago sounding phrase. I just start every time I say that. 2, 3 things. Oh my God.
I'm so glad to have you back in Chicago, Michael. And you fit right in.
I do, man. You and I, before we went live, we talked about a specific well-known atheist who's kind of converting, and we talked about Richard Dawkins earlier. I mentioned Hitchens, and there are other ones. You and I saw Sam Harris, Matt Dillahunty, and what was Lawrence Krauss, right? A few years ago.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, a few years ago. It's 6-7 years ago now. So do you still follow any specific person, any podcast, any books that you think, this is something, if I had to give someone to listen to or watch or read, what is something on your list?
So I think, my entry into the world of like, atheism on YouTube, you can't avoid stumbling into the 4 horsemen, right, of atheism. And so that was my
say who those are? So people don't know.
Well, you just kind of said a lot of their names anyway.
Oh, okay. Just if you had them.
Dawkins and Hitchens and Harris. Who was Lawrence Krauss? No, it was the older dude with the scraggly hair. He had like.
I remember.
Anyway, I can't remember either. So
Mary Jane could look that up and she'll put it in the notes.
Yeah, somebody put it in the chat. Who was the fourth horseman?
The four horsemen. Yeah, for the
for the atheist movement. But they're all white men. And that isn't the most appealing to me. And again, nothing about white men. My husband is a white man. My son is a white man. And as are you. Denning. Yeah, there you go. Larry put it in the chat. Denning.
Oh yeah.
The fourth horseman.
Dennis Den. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Larry.
Yeah. And Randy did too.
Oh, very good. I'm only seeing Larry for some reason.
I think you have a different list because Randy just posted and I haven't seen Larry. So
okay. Well, thanks, honey. Randy's my partner.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that is like where you're gonna see the most content, is about like because there was a bunch of time where they were doing, tons of like debates with religious folks and but I had to move on from that because I mean there's a lot of misogyny still in, just like there is in the the structures of the church and in religion. There was and is a lot of misogyny still, even in atheism, especially if there's no diverse representation at the table or people's voices being amplified.
Yeah.
Then, they don't represent everybody. Right. And so I think that they, do important work. And who else do we have, and so my very first kind of like feminist atheist role model was Ayaan Hirsi Ali. She was Somali born, but lived in the Netherlands most of her life, and she ended up she grew up in the Netherlands and served in their parliament for a period of time. She also was a former Muslim who spoke out against Islam and was almost murdered because of it. And so she wrote a book called Infidel about it. So that was probably the first like feminist atheist author that I experienced. And my current favorite, I guess I'll just say, is what's her name? Greta Christina. She is she reminds me, she's probably on the spectrum, I would say. She's like a little bit odd and kind of like very idiosyncratic, but also just like, I don't know, relatable. I find her relatable in that way, is that she's, she can crack a joke every now and then, but she can also just like serve up the truth. She's written many books about, like how to have relationships with Christians if you're an atheist, how to tell your employer, or not, how to deal with it in the workplace, I guess.
Right, how to just fit into society and struggles that sometimes persist,
100%. And so she takes a lot of these questions. Like her first book was called "Why Are Atheists So Angry?" And so she's just kind of like myth busting and a little bit of like breaking up some of these misconceptions. And so she's one of my current favorites. I pledged a goal in 2024 to read only books written by Black women, and I succeeded in that. So, but then I get away from some of the atheist readings that I had been doing for a while. So I'm we're in 2025 right now. I just finished the last book that I started at the end of last year, and so I'm ready for some new ones. So I don't know if anybody has any recommendations for, not the super obvious ones. Like I've read, like
you've read Christian or Hitchens
and Dawkins and like all of those, but what do we have in other spaces and like more diversity to bring more diverse voices into that conversation?
That's one thing I wish I saw more, and I don't know if it exists and I'm not seeing it, because the way most of our social media, it's sort of algorithm based and you end up getting the same things over and over again. But I don't see enough people of color, and there's probably a lot of different cultural reasons for that as well. But I wish we did see more people of color, of all colors, that and feminists as well, or not feminists, not
women,
word,
even
female.
I'll settle for women.
Yeah, more women, and then also people of color. And that would be interesting to explore with someone. So if anyone's out there that fits any of those, I mean, you're obviously a woman, but I mean, a person of color specifically, because I'd love to delve into some of the cultural issues, because I think there are some different issues there that you and I maybe never experienced.
Right, 100%.
In terms of our culture, our family, and that kind of stuff, there's some definitely some deep roots within. Because I grew up in the South, so blacks and whites living together is pretty common. Obviously, with all the problems they had too. So I'm fairly familiar with, say, black churches and the community down there, because that's what I grew up around. And I grew up in a pretty mixed area of town and school, but at the same time, they're very religious. And I say they again, it's not one monolith, but as you broad strokes, it's a pretty religious group. And I'm sure to break away from that is the same struggles you and I have, but it's maybe stronger in some ways, But I would love to talk to somebody in depth and find that out. So again, if you are one of those kind of people that fits those criteria we just gave, let me know. I would love to have you on this broadcast. Last question that we can leave with other people. Someone out there is going to watch this, or someone out there is right now having the same questions you and I had at various times in our life. What's your advice to those people that are questioning their faith? How should they pursue that? Where should they go with that? And with that struggle, for lack of a better term?
So the advice that I would give to somebody who may be like just starting to maybe pull the veil back, so to say, and step into this world is to, just stay curious and to be open to not knowing all of the things, right? Like if the answer, let's be honest with ourselves about what we don't know and just say, like, I don't know the answer to that. And that's okay, right? That we don't know everything. We can't have the answer to everything. I like my aunt just recently told me like a book title or something, and I was like, oh, I got to add that to my ever growing list of books that I have to read. And she says, you're not going to ever be able to read all the books. And so, the same thing applies here, is that you can't ever know all the things. Unfortunately, I wish that there was some way to magically do that.
Like the Matrix, to just plug it in and boom, we know all knowledge.
Plug and play, right? Yeah, like all of a sudden, enlightenment means everything. So just like continue to explore and talk to other people and share your story and listen to others with some, again, as Carl Sagan, keep an open mind, just not so open that your brains fall out.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much. This is our first one, a little technical glitches at the beginning, but I think it's important that we talk to people with different perspectives, different backgrounds, and someone's going to, again, listen to this one or listen to the next one or 17th from now, and something that person says is going to click with them. And they're like, that's exactly what I'm thinking right now. Or I'm going through that thing right now. Or I have a child and I don't know what to tell them either, because I wasn't raised as a child of an atheist.
Just on that topic. So if down the line you have these more, in-depth topics that you want to do. I know we kind of just had to kind of do some broad strokes today because this is the first one. But keep me in the rotation, and down the line, if you have, a topic and you think of me, reach back out. I'm happy to do this again.
I definitely will. And if you are in the Chicagoland area, just reach out to us. We do social meetups once a month. We didn't really get into that, but one of the things we have found is a lot of people do miss the social aspect of church, and I certainly understand that. So we do provide that. We do try to get together. We're trying to get together more frequently than we did for a while. But reach out to us. If you have, you can reach out to us regardless. But if you're in the Chicago area, we'd love to meet you, and just see that we're normal people. We just like to go to the beach, and we go to bars, and we hang out at each other's houses, and we just try to provide a little bit of a social network for people. And where they can speak freely, and not.
I mean, I think we all share kind of our maybe our journey to atheism in the first couple of times that we meet up. But once we get acquainted with each other, we already know that story, and then we just learn all these other things about all these fantastic folks. So there's a whole bunch. Dennett. He said Dennett, not Denning. Yeah, okay. I knew that sounded right, but I couldn't place it.
I saw Devin said that too. Daniel Dennett, right? Dennett. Yeah. Devin wrote Aaron Robb. That he wasn't one of the horsemen, but Randy also put Randy corrected, put Dennett. And Aaron Ra is another guy that you can get on. It's Ra, R-A at the end, as another name to look up as a YouTuber. I mean, he's more than a YouTuber, but you can find him on YouTube.
Hopefully we can, be a source of camaraderie for some folks who are going through, the struggle and the journey. Because there's, even if there isn't any like really big boulders in the way, there's still a lot of uncertainty, and there's still a lot of like undoing of brainwashing that could happen in some cases. We've had members of our atheist group that have escaped cults, and other people who have escaped, like fled their countries, multiple people who have fled from other countries because the consequence of their community finding out that they are atheist is death.
We literally just had a meetup last month, so 3-4 weeks ago, whatever it was. 5 people there that came from countries that they could be put to death if they were to say that they were atheists. I mean, 5 people out of 18 or whatever that we all met. I mean, it's one thing for you and I as Americans, white, middle class, middle-aged, I'm older than you. But Americans growing up with the privilege that we have, we can be annoyed by a lot of these things.
Sure.
We're not going to be killed. Nope. We're not in danger. We're annoyed, and we can have things that go against us, and we can have jobs that cause problems and friends that drop. We're not going to die. So I try to keep that in perspective. It's a real world problem, but I live in the real world, or first world problem. I live in the first world, so it's still relative to me. But there are people out there that literally, and as you mentioned, and I just said 5 people at our last thing here in Chicago that came from countries that put to death. Simply for not believing what the government in that case basically believes, and the vast majority of society believes. So so again, I hope that we do more of these, and we can get some of those people on. I mean, I don't want to put those people necessarily on unless they're willing to, but I want to
if they so choose.
Yeah, if they so choose, absolutely. But yeah, we've had a lot of interesting people that we've run across in this last 10 years that we've been running this group together. And it's fascinating to see the journeys that people go through. So again, thank you for joining this one, being the first guinea pig on this.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. And this will be up on our Facebook page, and it's also on the YouTube page, which I will post. I know you posted on your Facebook the YouTube link. It'll be there. As soon as it compiles, it'll show up as in a video. And if you have any questions, just please reach out to us. And in the meantime, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Ask an Atheist. If you've enjoyed the episode, consider subscribing and leaving a review. You can find the full interview and more clips on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.